3000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by an MC, musician, a man of many talents. 1-6, thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me, man. Yeah, we finally got around to it.
It's been a few times in the making, but we finally got around to it, man. And
Yeah,
so
man.
it's you've got a decent journey, which is going to be an interesting chat. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's finally happened. But straight off the bat, man, the 1-6 name. Can you explain that to us?
Word. All right. So, essentially, the beginning of the 1-6 journey was I actually wanted to do. I was doing art in high school, and I wanted to do like start a T-shirt company essentially, and so doing T-shirt designs and was thinking of a name, and so at the time I was also writing, the beginnings of writing poetry and writing bars and stuff like that. And there was one night I was, sketching, writing rhymes, watching music videos, like kind of just chilling on the weekend. And there was it was kind of like similar to like Foxtel where, you have different subscription and you have different, music channels, sports channels, da-da-da-da. So I'm always like flicking through stuff. And so there was one channel called Channel O, which was a music channel, but it was like South African based where it was. And so a lot of mainly hip hop and R&B and like, like a focus on black and African music, African American, like even in the diaspora, a lot of UK stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm rambling. We'll
but it
get to
sounds
it.
cool,
But like, yeah, so it's like, really awesome. It's kind of similar to Channel V,
Yep.
essentially. So it's like a lot of local content. So you see a lot of, Australian music videos on Channel V alongside the international stuff. So anyway, I'm watching this channel and it was Aaliyah's 1 in a Million music video was playing, so I kind of watching that. And then as I'm flicking through channels, there was also the celebration. It was like a UNHCR kind of world celebration of the 6 billionth, I guess, recorded birth, should I say?
Yeah.
Since the formation of the UN, and they're doing the population census and all of that. And so anyway, so it's like I'm kind of flicking through that. It's 1 in a million Aaliyah, then like the 6 billionth child, or like kind of around that. And I'm also writing rhymes, and so I'm like, I'm not 1 in a million, I'm 1 in a billion, and that like kind of at the time was 1/6 of the population, and then that kind of was like kind of messing with that, and then the idea was like, a T-shirt is 1/6 of your outfit as well, and if you're wearing a hat and T-shirt, and so all of these kind of ideas and concepts like kind of married the two of them, and and then 1/6 I was just kind of I was into graph as well. Like I haven't been a prolific graffiti artist or in any case, but I like doing a tag or sketching some stuff, and so I was just writing 1/6 kind of everywhere, like I wasn't really using a marker, but I'd write it on the chalkboard or something like that. People are like, who's that or what's that? And then so the name kind of slowly became weaved into being kind of my name, or only close friends knew me, so like say 1-6, and then so
Man, that's a deeper response than I thought.
yeah,
I thought you'd be like, a 1 is A or something like that, you know what I mean?
and then there's a lot of layers as well, like my first name's Aaron.
That's
and,
what I was
so
thinking
it's
it
like,
was
so
coming
yeah,
to, yeah.
come to that, and then I'm born on the 6th, so,
Okay.
so
It
it's
just
like,
works.
it just kind of works on the different strata of even the name and the meaning of all the layers, if you will.
For sure.
So,
And it's cool, even with like the 3000 thing, like when you've got numbers, you can use them numerically and alphabetically as
Yeah,
well.
that's it,
So you've
yeah.
got the 1-6 and then you got it's like 7-6, you know what I mean? Similar sort of thing.
Yeah, and even the way that I used to spell it before wasn't like as it is now 1/6. It was phonetically spelled out, so it was WANSIKS, and then the theta symbol, which is TH in the I guess like when it's phonetically spelled out, which is the Greek alphabet, I guess, or like kind of uses elements of that. So that's how I used to write it out. So it looked cool. It was like, what is that? Like but then eventually, in terms of as everything's kind of migrated digitally, like the naming conventions of stuff, like, you kind of find that it's very difficult. So even 1/6 numerically, it's like if you try and put that, or, saving a file as 1/6, it's like it's 1 of 6. And then, kind of would just spiral out. So there's 1/6 spelled out.
And
You
then
know,
you've
it's
got to
like
be
kind of
1/6 as well.
yeah.
because
Then
you've
one
got to
slash
say
because
it.
it's it's got to be the intended kind of meaning behind it and the so.
But the upside to that is you've got a lot of different ways you can spell and say your name, which gives you more wordplay to mess with as well.
Yeah, and then even because I'm into hand styles and stuff like that, so writing it differently, it's like writing out 1/6 or just the numbers 1/6 or ONESIXTH or so it's like kind of all different styles, the king of style.
1 million possibilities.
That's it, yeah, billions.
So, well, that's the name. So let's talk about growing up, man. So you were born here in Australia, but then where'd you grow up?
So born here, and my parents of Namibian heritage. So when Namibia got independence from South Africa, which was then from the British, then from the Germans, and it's just like colonial history all over there. But then Namibia got independence in 1990. So in 1990, essentially, and then my folks felt like, okay, well now we can go back. It's not as the turmoil isn't really as as
So
I mean, it's still
how
there,
old were
but
you
like
though when you went back?
so when we went back, I was 5.
Right.
So I was 5, and my brother was maybe 9 months. So I've got a younger brother who's 5. We're about 4 and a bit years difference. And so just after the year he was born, that's when we went back to Namibia. So that was 91 we got there. And then I stayed there until 2004. I moved back to Melbourne 2004 and then was basically permanently here from 2007.
So as a 5-year, my son's 5 years old at the moment. I wonder whether he remembers much. Do you remember going back there?
Yeah, I kind of remember little bits of my childhood here before we moved over, like so kind of early
Very
formative
different
years.
culturally.
Very different. And then I guess because it's such a like that ripping or removal from everything that you kind of know, it's like it sticks in your mind because you hold on to like, oh, what was it like back then, and kind of, and then maybe the memories conflate and you remembering a very different thing to what actually was what was happening.
Yeah.
But it's how we survive. Your brain tricks itself to keep going,
Yeah.
So like just the whole people kind of, as we're going and telling people, oh yeah, we're moving back to Africa. People like, aren't there like lions and things? And so as a child, you're like, oh my God, are there going to be lions and things? It's like, which there are, but in very specific locations. It's not like you're kind of just in the city.
Here, but
it's like
bouncing down Burke Street.
But surprisingly, sometimes you find like there's people who in the cities like, yo, the kangaroos are just like running through the town, or if you go like in the country towns,
here,
So it's like you'll be driving and you kind of
yeah.
have to kind of stop traffic because there's like a whole bunch of them coming across, and but yeah, so it's not really like that in the city in the town. But then, as I'll explain a bit later, like growing up, we actually did grow up on a farm, so. In my teen years, like it's kind of like I laugh about it because it's like, even though that's a very kind of ignorant kind of, oh, there's wild animals everywhere, whatever. It's like I grew up 40 minutes out of the main capital city, and like there were wild animals. So it's like, so it's hard to kind of try and shoot down that stereotype or that notion when that's actually my life experience. So it's weird, like it's kind of there is truth in it, but like it's not necessarily the absolute truth.
Yeah.
So grew up here till 5, then moved back, grew up there.
So your younger brother didn't know any different, but you remember a bit of Australian life.
Yeah.
He just grew up there, being 9 months
I mean,
older,
he was
but-
just a baby, so didn't have any.
But you've got a point of reference to be like,
Yeah, a bit, and then, but then even coming back, it was totally like, this is not anything like what I remember it being. Is totally almost 20, or not 20, but like
15.
But almost roughly 15 years point of difference of being here and being in the school system, and like kind of being in Australian society, and then going to Namibia, where it's like a very different. Very different, but then there are similarities, of course. Like we're all human beings, but
Music
music sounds the same wherever the speakers are. Like it's like salt tastes the same, the water feels the same. It's like, there's a lot of, these like minor similarities, which then very much dictate the culture of a place where you are, like, but yeah.
So growing up there, obviously you're speaking English here. You go back there.
They speak English there.
Speak English.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just yeah. So then you're going to school and you're learning like what is the different cultural differences at the school there than there would have been to the school here?
The difference here, I guess, would be that like it's going back was just now kind of the shackles of apartheid and all of that, like kind of colonial imposition of power was like kind of falling away. But it was still like, so it's like institutionalized kind of, so it's like schooling is, like I was lucky to go to private school. So that like kind of when you realize that like, okay, the population, like the bigger the white population in the school is like probably the better facilities and kind of level of teaching and engagement with student and, like kind of it's hands-on in the education as opposed to certain schools where the funding isn't there, where even the neighborhoods and the, where it is like, the poverty levels. So it's like, real student engagement, people aren't passing like, ending up doing crime or, early pregnancy, not enough outside infrastructure to kind of support like here, like, if you don't do well in school, you can still take up an apprenticeship.
Yep.
You can still be able to find employment at a certain level. And if not, you have Centrelink or, Social Security that can support, as it might not be.
We're lucky here in that respect.
In that respect, it's like, and, it's like, even though there are hoops and things that people have to jump through to be able to maintain that and, be able to sustain a life out of that, it's still there.
Yeah.
As opposed to there, like, the kind of, and then I guess you get that awareness quite early, realizing like, man, if I don't pass grade 12, I can't even dream about having a job in an office.
Okay.
Unless my uncle works and owns that company or that's like a family business or that you have a connect there that, like you can start as a janitor and maybe work your way up.
But the
maybe,
private school
like,
system obviously puts you on the right track.
Puts you like, it's like you kind of have direct, like kind of
connection,
connect to opportunity. And even in that, like, there are people who I went to school with who, you fail year 10. It's like your folks aren't like not gonna pay another year for you to come and fuck up again. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you're on your own.
Hey man, we tried. Like you thought this shit was a joke. Like, all right, we'll see how you go. And and you see people like, where it's like, oh, it's cool, year 10, and then 2 years later you see him and homie's asking you for $10 in the street, and you're kind of like, my dude, like,
so
like,
so the private school gives you the leg up.
Gives you the leg up, but you have to have also commitment and dedication to, wanting to have better options for yourself. Like, it's like, it's only so much where, like that whole, you can lead a horse to water, you can't force them to drink, or, you know what I mean? Like, and you see, like, and it's the even in that metaphor is like, when you're also a horse being led to water and you're looking at other horses that are dehydrated right next to the water, and you kind of think, what happened? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you realize like, oh, okay, like the way that opportunities get presented to you, there's something in having ownership of that is misconstrued and feels like, oh, if I don't have it, then it's not a thing that I could do.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And then there's a thing of like, I have it, but now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's where the world is kind of at, and then there's people who kind of land into things just by accident or by, they work towards it. And
but I'm guessing family plays a big role. If your family has a business, you can
has a
ride
business,
through.
or if your family, like you have an uncle who's a lawyer, you have an uncle or auntie who's a doctor, you have, like your uncle's a mechanic, or your cousin is, like, so all of these things when you actually see it. So what I was going to talk to about ownership of these things is like when you see yourself in that situation, it makes it easier for you to work towards that.
Yes.
Whereas now, I'll talk back about like the colonial shackles and the institutionalized racism and systemic is that like it's like it was illegal for black kids to be able to go to that school. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
even
kind
if they
of,
had the money,
even if you had the means to do it, you are legally not allowed to do that. So if you are now coming up in that mentality, it's like the opportunity is right here and you don't see it because it's like you know the punishment of having those dreams. And so now as we're now the first generation of these kids who are coming up free to an extent, like, and so then now you start to see like, oh, okay, well, we can do this. Because now it's like, oh, it's not illegal for you to want to work towards being
illegal is crazy.
It's wild, right?
Like
it's like
to think they've made it hard is one thing.
Making it hard is one, but illegal, yeah. Where it's like you can go to jail, if not just getting beaten to death for having life aspirations. You know what I mean? It's wild, right?
That's the key to oppression, really, isn't it?
That's
like
the point.
To squash people's even their thought of being successful.
Yeah, just totally remove that from it and make it a thing that you even kind of perpetuate that and encourage that mentality. Don't think outside the box. Yeah, let's just sell drugs, or do this, or steal or whatever. Like and seeing being able to. Now I feel really lucky, even though it's like it's like I'm so lucky that I was able to witness that firsthand with the opportunity that I had to know that like, okay, I've got a responsibility to at least try my best.
Yeah, and you can understand why your family would want to get out of there, man. Like and I'm guessing
it was like,
they had the means to do it, where a lot of people don't have those.
And even within our family, like it's like my folks were the ones who kind of went abroad, but like their brothers and sisters are still there. There's so it's like I think that was also the impetus of them leaving from Australia and going back was like, okay, we need to be with our family. These kids need to know their family, which is the lucky aspect of like seeing that firsthand and witnessing like, oh, okay, like what family is, and it's not just the nuclear family, 4 people to a home kind of. It's like, no, like wider family and like extended family, married people who are married into the family, people who it's like, and family just by association and proximity. And
is there a hierarchy that's not official, but like, okay, if you go to a public school, you're here, and if you go to a private school, and people are looked at differently and that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. And so we weren't really super well off, like,
but having the ability to go to a private school helps.
Yeah, it definitely helped. So it was like, there was...
move your mic a tiny bit, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Oh, okay, sorry. And then we can see your face. Yeah, I'm hiding. Yeah, so... in terms of like, fairly, middle class family, my mom worked and then also there was, from my mother as well, like, that knowledge of, or kind of encouragement of study, be learned about things, like, have an awareness of certain things which can introduce like, knowledge to a skill set, or, like, you see the correlation of certain systems, how they work together, and why do you have to understand maths to be good at science? Like, you see, those little fundamental things that really tie everything together, but then also on a broader social level and then broader political or institutional level and things like that. And you gain more awareness of like, oh, okay, this is what's happening in the world. It's like, I don't understand how it works, but I see how when that happens, where it can fall out over here. Mm-hmm. Or this push of this can encourage, then now it's like there's a whole generation of kids who are tech heads now because of the one person who bought a computer 20 years ago. Where you see that kind of correlation and mirrors in society, and because you step back and you get to see the periodic table, as where you see all the elements and then know like, oh, okay,
put it together piece by piece.
Yeah, piece by piece. When this goes with this, this is that. When this goes with this, this is that. These two together makes that. This, in a broader sense, is this. Like, and so, like, kind of again, the private school education where it's like that's kind of it's in the curriculum,
Yeah.
and it's also supported at home, like whereas, kind of you see the kids who slip through the cracks because it's like, yeah, maybe they are in the private school system, but they don't have any support at home, or the educational or academic infrastructure isn't at home. So it's like maybe these are the first, because now as we're now just coming out of the shackles of, it's legal for you to study, but then the people at home didn't have that opportunity, so they don't really understand.
Yeah. Well, you
How
kind of
do
need
I encourage you to do homework, and then when you come and ask me something, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. You
You
kind of
know,
need a
you
whole
need-
generation to pass through, so then you can go, well, this is how it works.
This
now.
is how it works. Or you can speak to your uncle, and he does maths. Go and work with him, or like go and ask him some questions, and like you get and again, like the importance of family and having those structures in the home and in the outside of home, and then it's like kind of fostered by the society and the community that you're in.
So
And
when
so-
you were there at school, so art is around? Do you start to see music? Like obviously music's part of the culture, but so how do you get into an artistic lane from that academic stuff?
Well, like, yeah, so in the just the fortune of having these kind of well-funded, how would I say, well facilitated, or like, just kind of, there's teachers who are of a certain, what would I say? The teachers in the school, or faculties, see the importance of each faculty, and then are able to kind of hold this. So I keep knocking the microphone, but like kind of, so even if it's the maths teacher, like, so even like if I say, growing up, like maths teacher was the basketball coach. Science teacher they were brothers. Science teacher is the chess coach and the soccer coach. So so it's like, even though like it's like, oh well, what does science got to do with sport? Like here we have sports scientists who are there, and then being able to engage with the students way better, because then they can actually show. It's like, here's a 3-point play. This is trigonometry. Here's the science. What's the degree of this pass? How is this pass? What's the trajectory of this shot? Like, so where you're like, oh, that makes more sense. So it's like, the supporting of those things kind of, again, like it travels in and through. Like, so then you have the geography teacher who's a very, avid history buff, and then has a Time magazine subscription. So then they have all of their magazines in the art department. And then so you get to, so as I'm, like kind of looking at photography and really great photography and things like that, like that makes a difference. Like if your classrooms, or, just kind of spaces where the students are, have all these access to all of these, avenues of where does art apply? How do you make art? Where does, what's this about? What's the history of this? And like, kind of,
If you want to learn, you can pick up extra stuff.
You can pick up extra stuff, and it's there. Like, whereas, so it's like having those facilities, as opposed to, some schools where it's just like, there's 20 students and there's 5 books to the class. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you got to wait your turn to get the book, or like, and then it's like, now you get the book and then it's passed to the kid who doesn't really know and just rips the book up. Now we've only got 4. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then, and so it's like I feel like I'm not necessarily explaining that whole situation that well, but it's just in the nutshell of what I was around and, seeing and growing up and experiencing. And then so even within the family, like I'm going to private school, but my brothers went to public schools. Like, so
But you can teach them.
But then, so now I'm seeing like, oh, okay, the book that I have is totally different to this one. It's like, kind of, this is what you're studying now. Like we did that shit 2 years ago. Like kind of, so you see the kind of difference and the academic level where it's pushed and how it's, so it's like you see certain schools where it's just like their sports programs are off the chain. These guys are like the most prolific athletes in the country. but that's what they have to kind of be able to be good at to then maybe get what call it, scholarship or bursary is what you call it, like, like to be able to then go to university and, hopefully, be able to, make something and have an education and then, kind of set yourself up for the future just when you get injured or, because that's the reality. Yeah, you got to have a backup plan, and your backup plan has to be stronger than the one that you're on now. Like, because then when both work, then you're really set.
Yeah, that's it. And so how does music fall into it?
So music, my folks, like, they're very, 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 like, how would I say it? Don't want to paint the wrong picture of my folks, like, but they were like, especially to answer your question of what I would remember when we were still here in Australia, because there was such a small African community. So when they would get together, it was, it was big parties, a lot of music, like coming up. And so we'd listen to all sorts of stuff, like be listening to the Commodores and then listening to Hugh Masekela and Miriam Makeba and Fela and all this African music. But then there's all the new stuff. So it's Michael Jackson. And so this is the 80s. So it's like MC Hammer, like, like that was happening. What else? 80s, like even the pop stuff like Kylie Minogue and, so it's like it was kind of just that time of the 80s where, like a lot of music was happening, and even just the technology, like CDs were just coming up, and there was vinyl, but like CDs was just like, wow, like, you could select a track, like, you don't have to like kind of get this thing on the thing, just risk scratching the vinyl, like, it's just like pop, pop. And so, yeah, so there was a lot of that always in the household. My dad, like, was collected music, and my mom as well, like, they had their, their favorites. A lot of Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, like that my mom was listening to, like she was like really into that R&B kind of. Lionel Richie, yeah, all of that. Tina Turner, like she loved Tina Turner. It was like, who wouldn't? She was amazing, that woman. And then a lot of the African queens of music, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, I was kind of, taking it back.
So the influence was always there.
So it was always there, like it was always in the home. And I really enjoyed dancing. That's kind of my vibe. And so like I would always be like, Aaron, come dance for the people. So dancing in front of everybody and stuff like that, dancing, doing the moonwalk and stuff like that. It's like, how'd you do that? And so
it's awesome that they encouraged that artistic stuff as well, because I could imagine a lot of people would have been like, you go to a private school, you're going to do academic stuff. Don't worry about this artistic stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, that was also the pressure. Like, so it wasn't even like me getting towards art wasn't until like year 9, where it was kind of like, oh shit, like I'm not really good at these other subjects. Like I've got to pick something that like I will be able to pass, like, and then art was kind of, in a way, it was like the low-hanging fruit, because it's very, it's hard to really judge art.
It's subjective.
Yeah, it's really subjective. So it's like in that, so it's like it's more you can be critiqued on your dedication to it. And that shows kind of the quality. It's not so much in the work, but it's in the workmanship, which then it's like you can pass. Like, so it's like not like 7 + 17 if you write 28. It's like, no, that's not right.
You can say that's my art.
But it's like, whereas in art you can do that and say it's like, oh, there's all these ethereal hidden elements which do make up the part, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess if you put it like that, yeah. but at a scientific level, it's kind of, that's argued into the.
But there is a lot of mathematics and a lot of rhythm and pattern in art as well. With the people, some people choose to use it, some people choose not to use it. When it comes to music, though, there's a lot of that sort of mathematics.
There's a lot of it's like just like a lot of the really granular timing, or even aesthetic, and it's like if you look at the shade of green, you know what I mean? Like that's a whole color palette in itself, and that's just one hue. Like so. What were we talking about?
Like
how I got to music. Well, yeah. So the music was there, and so in terms of how I got to really starting to create for myself was then when I started doing art and was like, okay, this is a subject I need to pass. So I really wanted to kind of dedicate myself to that.
So is art and music one artistic thing, or there's art and there's music?
So they ended up bleeding together later on, or even up to current times. They've now kind of bled, and I'm more like kind of focus on one aspect to then have a template for the other in a way. Because I'm always like kind of very concept driven in terms of the things that I do. So it's like, it's always kind of like, what is this concept before I even start writing about it, or you know, trying to add music to it. Because then once I understand that, when I hear the music, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's.
So it's all part of the bigger picture.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So to answer the like when and where, like it was when I started doing art in high school, because I sucked at geography and I didn't really enjoy history. Not so much that I loved the concept of history, but the way it was being taught and what we were, it was like very,
especially
like,
coming out of that colonialism.
Yeah,
stuff.
so it was really like this. We're just celebrating the colonial
It's too
history,
raw
and
as well.
and not that it was raw. It's like, you know, for us, it was something that we knew from childhood and growing up. So it's like when you start to now see where it's just like, what? Like
that's essentially what history is. It's like these people took over this place when they shouldn't have.
over when they shouldn't have. And but it's like, you know, this very much like the way some of it was being presented was this very pat on the back, like, well done, you've civilized the natives. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Like that's, you know, and so I guess being the country and, you know, citizens of this country where we'd kind of gotten a bit past that, not that it's totally eradicated, like, you know, the kind of the echoes of it are still there. You can still see. It's just like, oh, okay, now there's a foothold here. Like, you know, it's like that's going to take
it doesn't just
generations.
change,
It's going to take generations to kind of change and change the mindset around it and the understanding of where the actual pain is in seeing all these statues and, you know, like the well-maintained fucking buildings.
Still have it here in
it's still here,
Australia,
and that's the thing where I'm saying it's generational.
Hundreds of years later.
It's generational, and it's like, you know, and it's really kind of a it's a global issue. It's, as you're saying, like, you know, the remnants of apartheid are still here, like, you know what I mean, like, and running the country, like, and so having the perspective also then of being from a place where seeing the change of power, if you will, or whose hands the power is in, and seeing what that can do to a national sentiment, and, you know, really kind of a national pride and a, you know, kind of feelings of like, yeah, we have further to go, but we can do it, you know, and it's like,
start somewhere.
That's it. And so there's a lot of that is there. I don't know why I keep running on these tangents and forgetting what the answer.
My job is to bring you back to it, but it's that stuff's important to talk about. But yeah, you decided that.
Because I didn't like history and geography, and so that's, or just because of the way that it was being presented, and I just felt like I don't want to fill my brain with that.
Yeah,
I want to learn the opposite of what you guys, this bullshit that you guys are talking is not true.
Yeah.
Especially when we were starting to read more about the Namibian history and the things, and it was just like, oh no, this book is talking some shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like where like, oh, the Germans came and they massacred this whole thing and da da da, and it's just like, what?
Who wants to dive into that? And
and it's not even a thing of who wants to dive in, but it's like, if you know this, where's the justice out of it then? How do you compile books and books and books, and the people responsible for this aren't being brought to light and being brought to justice? You mean you just have to know that shit and then be like, yeah, okay, and be happy with it? It's like, nah, fuck that. Like, you know, and so anyway, so that was my whole stance on that in terms of that was being kind of something that I had to know and know well and not have my own critique of it. And if I did kind of ask questions about it, I'm wrong and I can fail this subject because it was like, fuck that.
At least with art, you're in control.
Yeah, exactly. I can paint the narrative, whether it's one that's already established and I'm changing it. Like, I'm not going to get in trouble for it. Like, you know, I'm not going to be penalized and be like, oh, you don't show any acumen or any studied things. It's like, no, I have to know all of these things to be able to translate it and make something else. but there's still, then that builds and encourages it's like, oh, okay, what is this about? What is this history actually? What is, you know what I mean? Like, what is the actual behind this bullshit veil that's been put up for us and everyone, so that, you know, people who are doing fucked up shit, like, you know what I mean? Like, can kind of sit and do it with impunity. And it's just like, you know, so that's where the art, you know, I feel like it's a weapon, you know, like Fela Kuti says, music is a weapon. Like, and it's really to shoot down all these bullshit narratives about, like, you know, who's in power, what is power, like, why are you in power, what did you do to earn that?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, did you really win the affection or the, you know, like the you know, like the trust of people by doing the right thing, or did you just you know, you just been doing what you've been doing?
Yeah.
And every time someone says something, they just disappear. It was like, what? The hole just opened in the ground and they just vanished after challenging you? You think we don't know what the fuck's going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you know, it's like, think of having been in school and it's just like me and you, 3 o'clock. Like, you know what that shit is. Like, you know, so
you decided that was the way that you wanted to head.
Yeah.
And can you do that academically? You still have to do the other sort of...
You still have to do all the other subjects and pass and be able to kind of thing. But then those English and art were the subjects where I really excelled. And then again, English was also fairly subjective depending on the whatever the subject in the, you know, it's like if it's creative writing, I can write whatever the fuck I want. Like, you know, it's like, and then if it's just, I love reading. So it's like if it's just to write a report about a book I read, do that in 5 minutes, like you know, like I could do. And it's like, it was one time where I didn't even really read the book. I just read the fucking byline at the back of it and then just paraphrased that for like 2 pages and got 95% for it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you could do
yeah. So, you know, so luckily I had those foundations again, going back to, you know, like in terms of having books at home and being encouraged to read from an early age. So it's like my grasp of language, English language, was a bit advanced, and I was able to kind of to harness that and have that as a skill set, which I can then apply across to all the other subjects and, you know, kind of keep
building.
It wasn't like I was acing every subject. I think art and English I got A's for, like, because again, in the subjective, you know, the subjective aspect.
And you're passionate about it. It's easy when you're passionate.
And so it's easy, So it's like, again, you know, that kind of thing about that I said before about ownership, of where you see yourself in that situation. It's easier for you to work towards something in it or around it, because you know, oh, okay, yeah, I'm good at that. Or I know how to do this, and I know how this can apply to that, and I can mix the two and, you know, kind of develop something. So,
did you have in the back of your mind that you were going to come back to Australia, or you thought that you were going to stay there?
Well, I thought I was going to, or in my heart, I wanted to go and study in South Africa, because that's where all my friends were going, and it was closer to home. Like, you know, you can get on a bus and drive for 24 hours and you're in South Africa. And that was kind of the pathways of, you know, it's like, all right, finish year 12, go to university in South Africa, get a degree, come back home, work, start a family, and that's, you know, that's kind of the, you know, that's the path, whether it's South Africa or going to university in Namibia or Polytech or whatever. That was kind of the prescribed path for everybody.
Okay, yeah.
But then as, you know, I'm like kind of finishing up with school and then, you know, looking into the fees and how much it costs. And it's just like, ooh, I don't know, like, you know, it's pretty expensive. And then, yeah, it was just kind of like, I've got an Australian citizenship. So it's like, there's free education, well, not free, like you have to pay it back, which I am, but, but yeah, it's there. Like, you know, you don't need to upfront, like, you know what I mean? Like you can do the course. So then that just became like, as the years were going by, like that was just kind of the more realistic pathway for me.
And you're pretty lucky with that, because I'm guessing a lot of people don't have that Australian passport.
Nah.
So they have to do the other ways.
The other ways, yeah. So I had that option, and then I could apply to any university in Australia, you know. Yeah. So then had that, and then so it was kind of like, oh, okay, well maybe the artistic kind of, you know, like if I move towards this direction, like, you know, there are the options of that. But then I'm very much, I guess I alongside the art and the music and stuff, like I'm also like really into computers and stuff. So I always wanted to do computer science. Like I don't know if you remember the TV show Beyond 2000.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
do,
Like
yeah.
so like that TV show used to also show in Namibia.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how how current like if it came on Monday here, whether it was that same episode or if it was a couple weeks
They'd
behind or
showcase
something.
robots and just new technology, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so all of that, robots and like I was fascinated with that. And so a lot of even the early books that I was reading when I was young. So I started reading when I was 2 years old.
What? 2 years old?
Yeah, so I've been around books and like fascinated with books for
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's my mom's like encouragement. Like she was really,
Some
very
kids at
much
2 don't
about
even
like
talk,
yeah, I know, right?
can't
Like
talk
yeah,
properly. And you're reading books at
and
2
I'm
years
reading
old.
like so like starting with the children's books, and then like by the time I was 3, I was reading like the Isaac Asimov, that it's like so it's like basically like science fiction, early science fiction stuff.
You're reading science
so
fiction
it's
books
like-
at 3 years old.
Pretty much. Like I didn't really understand it as I was getting older. I was like, oh, okay, that's what that means. But I just was reading the word, and I was able to read the words, not really understanding, but just getting the
Yeah, you're training
just
your brain
training, to understand that, with my mother's encouragement.
That's
She's,
crazy, man.
and so, and so it's something that my mom was always very early on and like was very much like, don't speak to children like they can't talk. Encourage it. Don't tell somebody that they can't do it. Help them.
They're just young.
Yeah,
adults.
they're going to be So if you keep them in this bubble of, but then by the time they're 4, that's the only thing they know how to say because that's all that anyone's ever been saying to them.
Yes.
Of course they're going to struggle linguistically because they haven't had the training. You're not giving them the, it's like
Kids that grow up with adults around them mature earlier
Mature
because
way
they
earlier.
are that's
their peer
their
group.
peers and everything.
You know what I mean? Like it's their peer group, and so a peer group doesn't necessarily have to be your age group.
Yes.
And so so I was like kind of very like ahead on that. So like reading was always kind of like my thing, and then so reading, excuse me, so I'd just read anything, and so then like I'd just read the first thing I actually read and like was really like, oh, I kind of get this, and it was like I'd say 3, because I remember this is when we got the Coming to America, the videotape. So that came out 88. So this is like maybe 89.
Yeah. The
Had
VHS.
the VHS, and we were playing it, but you know how the tape sometimes would get caught in the thing. So the machine is like the tape would be stuck in the machine. And I was like, very early, like I was just like, I've got to figure out how to get that tape out of there and fix it so that we can keep watching it. And so I read the manual
to the VCR.
to the VCR.
At 3 years old.
Yeah, and so because it also had the diagrams, you know what I mean? Like it would show, and then like it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is the tape mechanism, and that's that, and it's like, oh okay, so, and then with my dad was also reading it, and then he was like, don't open this. Yeah. It's like yeah, I won't. And then they went to work or whatever, and I just got to work, like open it up, pull the thing out, like looking at the manual, and then kind of pull the tape out, fix the tape, put it all back in, and then like kind of acted like I didn't do anything, and then was, pretended I was just like, do you think it would work again if we just try again? And it's like, oh yeah, okay, let me try. And then they go press play, and it's playing. They're like, oh wow, it worked. And it was just kind of like,
At 3
but
years
then
old,
like
you
was like,
fixed the
oh wait,
VCR
like, yeah.
by reading the manual. That's phenomenal. That's genius shit.
I mean, it wasn't necessarily genius. It was because it was like it was with with my folks, like, and so like it's kind of like, well, someone needs to do it, otherwise the shit's going to be broken.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I'll just give it a try, and if it's broken, then it was broken anyway, so fuck it.
Yeah, that's it, and that's phenomenal. But
So-
if there is going to be a video that you want stuck in the VHS player, it's Coming to America.
Coming to
One
America,
of the best
yeah,
movies of all
exactly.
time.
Oh man, that is I swear down. Anyone who knows me, I tell them it's like that is the best movie
one of my
ever
favorites
made.
too, man.
Ever made. Like it's got the action, it's got and the great thing about it is it's like it's a comedy, but it's not presented to you as a comedy.
Yeah.
It's like really just like kind of this love story with hella funny shit happening around it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it also speaks to a lot more, like even, kind of young African growing up, like seeing, like African as royalty. You know what I mean? Like, and just because he says he's from Africa, then everyone's like, oh, but like, don't you guys like have lions and tigers and shit walking around? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, yes, but I also have a fucking palace, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
What makes that so powerful is he wants to be just a
normal
dude.
person. Yeah, exactly.
That's
You
what
know,
makes it cool.
and you see the humility where he's just like, I've got all these things, but does it make me a better person? What is it about me that I need to maintain that will make me worthy of being a king or being seen as a king? And you know, so it's like that. You know, yeah, the messages out of that movie really resonate with me a lot. Like, you know, still to this day. So
yeah, and man, one of my favorite films. I love that. And Eddie Murphy plays so many different roles and smashes it, man.
Smashes it.
I
like,
don't
you
think
know,
when I first watched it in the late 80s when I was a kid, I don't think I even realized how many roles he played until I was a bit older.
Yeah, and then you're kind of like, hang on, like, wait, that's him, and
He's
that's
the white guy
and
in
there's
the
the old
barbershop.
white man in the barbershop. Like, it's like, yo, it's unbelievable movie. Anyway, so manuals open up VCRs, you know, so I'm like, all right, I'm, you know, fascinated with technology because this is, you know, like the 80s, late 80s, like early 90s is really where the explosion of technology is really happening. And so I was like really interested in that. And my father also was like, you know, very encouraging. He was like, yeah, you should study computers. Like, you know, it'll be some, if you know how to do that, you'll always have a job.
It's the future.
You know, and so, so he was very encouraging of that aspect. And then I was lucky where my mom was working, there was computers there and there was a spare one that I could just kind of sit on and after school, like kind of figure out. And so I'm just like kind of going into the, you know, like diving into the system files and what's this and what is this, right?
Like
and
an
what's
old
all the
IBM or something like that.
Yeah, IBM kind of Windows 95. You know, stuff like that, which is a bit later. Like, this is after we moved back to Namibia. Yeah. So, so I've like kind of always had that kind of fascination with technology and robots and all of that stuff. And so that's, that the music and the art, that kind of all comes together. And it's like, yeah.
So once, if you can pull apart a VCR at 3 and fix it, all of a sudden you see an NPC, you're like, oh, this is easy, man.
Well, but then the thing is that in Namibia, like that, all of the, like, you know, music, technology and stuff like that isn't really, it's not that available because it's not really a common thing. Like, you know, like music was very few people were doing music at a level that you could really say, okay, I'm a musician, I'm, you know, traveling around. And most of the time, like the people who were, I guess if you want to call it successful artists, like the success was from abroad. Like it wasn't, you know, like they're at home. It was like when they come back home and it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the most famous Namibian artist we have, but they don't really have a career in the country that's going to sustain them and be able to, you know, they have to be like pretty much 6 months out of the country to then come back and rest for 6 months and maybe work on new music and then go again. Like, you know, so that was kind of in terms of seeing music locally, like, you know, it was very far away. Like, you know, it's like, it's very distant. You're not just, you know, happen to get, you know, just happen to be
You're not going to gigs on a Monday night.
No, not at all. Yeah. Like, and if you are, that's not really a gig. It's just people playing music.
But it's part of the culture.
But it's part of, it's like, you know, part of the actual, you know, in terms of an artistic expression, and you see it like, you know, but it's very, you know, it's like not at a high level, you know. So the only time you're really able to see or be around people where they've got equipment and things like that is then where my mom was working eventually, over the years, like she used to work with cultural centers. And so like in those places, because it's arts focused, so then you're more likely to see things like that. But if you're not involved with the programs, you're not getting access to that shit, you know? So again, it's kind of at arm's length. It's not just something like, oh yeah, my brother's got an MPC or blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, the level of engagement with the music is purely at the consumption level. You know, so it's like
what are you seeing? What are you seeing? It's all from overseas?
Music-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, there are local artists, or at the time when in my formative years, like there were local artists, but it was very, very small, very niche, and again, unfortunately, like once it reached a certain level, it then went overseas. Like, you know, so it's like
They can't harness it.
they can't harness it at home, and they can't really do. So it's like you hear like, oh man, we went to London and we played to like 300 people. Like, you know, it's like, wow. And then they play at home and there's like 20 people there, and you know, it's like, and those 20 people like, look, there's nobody here. It's just like, you know, it's like that's not the, you know, it's like
Not the mindset.
not the mindset, like, unfortunately. And that's kind of the thing. It has to blow up overseas before people kind of appreciate it at home, kind of vibe. And so in terms of music, it was really like I just loved listening to it, and I was very much invested in it because it was something that, you know, like I put music on, read my book. I'm in like different planets at the same time, kind of vibe, you know. It was like I was very kind of on my own a lot like when I was younger, not by like I didn't want to be around people, just because of where we lived, where we ended up growing up a bit later on, like from year 8, year 9 was like 40 minutes out of town, which is like, it's like between here where we're at in the city, like, you know, kind of vibe. It's not that far, but it's like you're not catching a bus here. You know, you don't have a car, like you know what I mean? Like, unless you can hitchhike and get someone to pick you up on the way out this way, but it's,
so you gotta make your own reality.
So yeah, just, you know, make my own fun, like, you know, and kind of just build and do my own shit. And me and my brother as well. So my younger brother, sometimes he'd be here, but then he was more involved in sports, and so he was kind of doing that thing and was out of the house a lot more than I was.
So when you eventually finish school, you think, all right, well, I'm going to look into this Australian thing. I've got the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And then so you decide, I'm going to make the call when you come back here?
To do...
Well, when you eventually come back to Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when do I make the call on that? So when I finished high school, that was 2003. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, clock's ticking, got to try and get somewhere, like do something. And then, what was it? Yeah, it was kind of like it had been brewing for a while, but then like the actual realization of like, oh shit, we've got a plane ticket, I'm going on this date, like kind of happened pretty quick. It was
just
like,
by
you know,
yourself?
like, so I came by myself, yeah. So this was 2003 when it was like, okay, yep, we're going applying for applied to get the passport, which we had to get through the South African consulate or the Australian consulate in South Africa, like, and kind of.
But because you're
all
born
that. But
here,
I was
that
born
was
here,
never
so
gonna be a
it was pretty easy to get. So it was like literally applied for it, waited for the thing, got the passport, and as soon as I got it, it was just like, all right, it's on. You're going. We're booking the flights. Da, 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 da.
Your brother like take me with you, be like, yeah, you're.
And he was too young at the time, but then he did end up coming out, like about 3 years later. So so it was like very almost rash, you know, like in a month, like where I'm like hanging with the homies and stuff, and like was literally kind of like, I'm moving to Australia.
And you hadn't been back since you're 5 at all.
Nah, so I haven't
when
been
you got
back.
back here, it would have been like, fuck, this is different.
Yes, way different. But in a way, because I think because I like coming back, it was a very different. It was different in the sense of I'm here by myself, and it was kind of the responsibility of what I have to try and figure out and like kind of be on top of, like kind of early, like, you know, where it's like I'm 17. I can't really get too caught up in the like, oh my God, what's that? It's like I've got to kind of be like, yo, okay, if I'm not keeping my bearings or, you know, kind of really being.
Did you know anyone here?
I knew my godmother and my god sister, rest in peace. She passed away 2009. But those two. That was it.
And so you went to stay with them? Or
so I stayed with them for like I want to call it a month, maybe 3 weeks. Right. And then found there was a student village in Maribyrnong, which is like VU kind of student campus. But like, so they run the facilities, but then any student, like regardless of which uni you were going to, you could go and stay there. So it was like kind of like student dorms, but it was like multi. Yeah. So it's like Latrobe, Vic Uni, Deakin.
Yeah. Maribyrnong, you're pretty much in the city too. They're
pretty much, close, yeah. So nice and close to like right near Footscray and High Point.
Yep.
So yeah, so then stayed there, and then yeah, that was pretty much kind of the start of the Melbourne journey, like kind of coming back. And
And
so
what were you studying?
so I was doing IT. So yeah, so like the plan eventually, like I was just like, oh, okay, well, I don't have a decent enough art portfolio, so I probably won't get into this art school or into this arts program. It's like I wasn't really interested in studying English. I felt like I know that enough.
I've been reading since I'm two.
I've been reading a lot. Yeah, it's like I'm kind of across that. So yeah, so it was like the next thing, and like yeah, just what my dad was always saying. It's just like, yo, you understand how to use a computer, you will always have a job, and that,
Sure.
like again. So when it was 17, like kind of like, what am I gonna do? Like I can't stay at my auntie's house. She's now, it's like.
She wouldn't let you stay
You
longer
know,
than
it's
3
like-
weeks if you wanted to. Surely that's not long. It's like-
Yeah, but then I also didn't want to. Like I was
do your own
very like, yeah, just kind of was like, you have your space, you've got your shit that it's like, the pressure. It's seeing firsthand the pressures of not having the extended family and being a single parent and whatever, and then now having some other kid coming in instead. It was just like, nah, it's cool. And even my mom was just like, you better get out of that house. I don't want you staying at somebody else's house. He's just here, doesn't even wash the dishes and
So you get out there, and how do you get involved in the Melbourne music community? man?
Well, man, like that was kind of so easy because it was, especially at that time, it was just happening everywhere. Like
And you're so close to the
everywhere,
city.
and yeah, so close to the city, and then where again, like so, I'm just naturally curious. Like I'd like to figure things out for myself, like so. First thing that and at this time I was like a serious hip hop head, like so I'm like obsessed with rap, like what I mean, like so it's like regardless of whether it's African hip hop, South Korean hip hop, Nigerian, Japanese, Australian, whatever. I want to be across that shit and know who's doing what. Like so, that Source magazines and the Hype magazines and excuse me. There's one magazine called Y magazine back from South Africa, which was kind of almost like a complex,
Yep.
kind of like fashion, just
kind of
kind
like
of
a Claim was here, sort of.
yeah, pretty much, yeah, like a lifestyle mag kind of thing. And yeah, so it's just like and every time like, what's the new releases? What's this and that? What's that? And it was hard to find those things in Namibia because like there's not really, the distribution isn't really. It's in South Africa you can find all that shit, but then you have to get it imported from there and whatever. Whereas here it's like like JB Hi-Fi is like had everything. Everything, and I was just like, yeah, I even like made friends with one of the guys who was working at the JB Hi-Fi in High Point, because he was just like, I was there every fucking week, and I'm like, I'll take these, thank you, like because I was never able to actually have hard copies of all these albums. It was all just burnt shit and downloaded on Napster and all of that.
And you want to read that stuff as well.
So
You wanna
yeah,
pull
man,
the
I want to
booklets
pull the
apart.
book. I'm like in the liner notes and all of that. Smell that shit, like like because that's it's like it's
Yeah.
this thing that like with like the contents of that package like changed my life. Like a lot of these albums, so it's like.
It is.
Wow,
It's
like
totally
the-
different when like growing up in the '90s and downloading stuff. It's cool you listen to it. But I remember listening to like Big L. I'm like, I don't even know what this dude looks
Yeah.
like because you'd only been handed like burnt
A
stuff.
burnt CD,
so
yeah,
Then
and
getting
so-
that and seeing and physically seeing, this is what this guy looks
this
like.
what
This
he
is where
is,
they're
like,
from.
oh,
That's
this what,
really
yeah,
cool.
it's so great. And so that was the like kind of the introduction was like going to JB Hi-Fi, which was just close to this student village where I was staying. And so this guy who I was kind of talking to, he was a DJ, and he was like, yeah, come like I'll DJ at this bar called Finnegan. So it was like it's a bar like on an Irish pub bar, but
Sounds
then
like
it's
an
like
Irish pub.
it's like the name was a dead giveaway. It's like, yeah, Finnegan's. Oh yeah, that Ethiopian restaurant. Yeah.
That's good.
So yeah, so he was DJing, and then like he would play a Tuesday night at this, like it was a uni night and whatever, and so like I'd go and watch that, And so then I was like,
He's playing
I'm
hip hop
kind of,
music. Or
he's playing hip. I mean, he's playing pretty much like just general commercial shit.
Yeah.
But then sometimes he'd like slip in a roots song or play like Pheromone or something. And it's like, yeah, doing it for the heads.
And you're writing raps at this stage?
Yeah, so I'm writing, not necessarily writing songs as much, but like writing and
Poetry.
like poetry to music, I'd say.
Okay.
And so like I kind of kick some rhymes to him sometimes, and he's like, "Yo, have you heard of Obese Records?" And like he asked me that, and I was like, "No, what's that?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, it's a like hip hop store, like they got graffiti and where is it? Where is this place?" And like looked it up. This is back in it's like Melway's days, right? So it's like you had to like kind of photocopy the page where Izette Street is to figure out like how to get there from Paran Station and all. Like yes, also like people will be like, "What? Melways? What the fuck? Were you born in the 80s?" It's like, yes, I was. So yeah, and then like kind of went there, and
you walk. So let's just paint this picture.
So yeah, sorry,
so
I'm
you
like
walk
going
in,
all over the
but
place.
this is cool. This is interesting. So someone who's only been here for less than a year, I reckon. You walk into Obese.
I was here for, I think it was like I've been here 2 months or something
2
like
months.
that.
So you walk in here into Obese. Who do you see? What is it like? Is it all just like wow?
So walk into the store, and it was, I think, Bias. It was Bias and Muff and Frank.
Yeah.
Frank was it was Bias and Frank.
Okay.
And that was the first, like now I remember the first time, because the first time I went out, got nervous and shit, and just like kind of looked around and then like just walked out.
And you had no knowledge of Aussie rap at that stage, really?
Not really, nah. So I guess what else did like, and then also just with my curiosity, I got on the internet and just typed in like Australian hip hop, and ozhiphop.com came up like first hit.
Then,
so you know what I mean? Like, so that was kind of getting into the forums and signing up for that, and kind of seeing what was coming up or who's doing what and And so, so actually at that time, it was when Mons had dropped the Double Beef, the 7-inch with Methods, the What's Happening track. And so that was like literally the first Australian hip hop song that I'd ever heard. Like, like kind of my own kind of researching and so, oh, what's this? And click play, as opposed to, what was it? What's my homie's name? Jay West.
Yeah.
Was kind of ringing out at the time.
Dude.
Like, yeah, it was a basketball dude. But then because he was rapping in an Australian accent, and so I just assumed it was American rap. I didn't realize like, oh, that's from here. Like, this guy's like making it here.
He was from Adelaide, I think.
He was based in Melbourne.
Okay.
Yeah. He was working with, I think, that dude rapping on, that bang this in the club, spray the joint, like it was Digger. This is the other rapper. I think he was
from Adelaide.
Is he?
Someone was from Adelaide.
Right. No, because, was he from Adelaide? Because I'm pretty sure like that Digger dude, I think, was working with like Weapon X and Ken Hell, and like they were all right. Like in the same crew, and then like kind of whatever. Anyway. Yeah. So the Oz Hip Hop Forum, all of that, and then going into Obese. So the first time I went in was before I checked the site. And so then when I'm checking the site, and it's like these guys and this and seeing pictures and being like, oh, that's the guy who was behind the counter over there. Like, oh, okay, cool. I can ask him about what's it like rapping, and kind of chew his ear off and stuff like that. And I was kind of curious. I was like, also like, what does it take to get a record deal, or what are the pathways? Like, what's the avenue? Like, and then Frank was very, like, when I eventually, kind of got the courage to kind of actually talk to them. Frank was like, yeah, just gave me advice that like I still think is very true. He was just like, well, see what people are doing and try and figure out how to learn how to do it yourself. And then because in that trying to learn how to figure out how to do it yourself, you'll find yourself around people who are also doing the same thing. And then there can be the division and distribution of labor in terms of trying to do that. So
very methodical.
It's like, it was, and because like these are like if you think about how it'll be scaled up, like that's what they had to do. You know what I mean? Like it had to be a collection of all these people who are kind of essentially doing the same thing, but coming from their own vantage points. So when all of that forms like Voltron, it's like, of course it's going to be strong. Of course it's going to be, you know what I mean? Like have resonation points, you know, in different crews, but then they're joined together by, oh, no, okay, well, this is the hub. You know, I don't have to like these guys, but we're all here together. So that's what we invest in and what we work towards. And then, the common interest, which then kind of eventually override any beef or any conflict. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, now we are building this. And, you know, you see the effort and you recognize the dedication and it's, you know, it's like, there it is. But it's like it is always from a point of learning to do better, right?
So Frank
and so that's what Frank, so that was like our first conversation, like some of the first, on the first 10 minutes.
Just walking
like,
into the record store.
Yeah, I know, right? And so I was always have been grateful for Frank and like in terms of that. And that's what he is in terms of like as a pillar of the
20 years later, he's the same.
He's the same, you know what I mean? Like anyone who walks into wherever his space, if you're around him, he's going to teach you something. And something that you see like, wow, this is like knowledge, you know?
Yep.
And so, so that was my conversation with Frank. And then like I'm talking to Bias, who he just dropped, I think it was In Bed with Bias.
Yep.
That one, the second one that just come out.
2004.
2004.
Timeline checks out.
Yeah. And so it had just come out, and like, you know, I don't want to say homie was feeling himself, but like, you know, he was like, and which is fair enough. That's a fucking great album, man. Like I think Beeswax definitely is, you know, it's the magnum opus. That's like kind of the entry, but like, In Bed with Bias was a fucking dope album, man. The production on that and the raps, man. He's spitting on that shit. Like, you know, he's like, I was like, whoa, okay.
So did you deep dive and then start to look at get those albums and start to listen?
Yeah, so I'm buying all of that. Like, you know, pretty much, you know, it's like I'm on Centrelink, so it's like, you know, but it's like I'm living, you know, very, you know, it's like I'm dolo. I'm not supporting a child or anything like that. So it's
all
like
your money's going into music.
So it's like I pay the rent. Everything else is just music or, you know, books or stuff like that. That's pretty much it. Like,
and all
you know,
that cultural shit's at your fingertips now. When you've had a yearning for that and you just didn't have it.
Didn't have the avenue. Like I'm only reading this in like the Source magazine or in these
almost
other
like an
things.
overload. You're like,
and it was just like, but then it's like it's happening every day. And so it's just like on a Monday you could go to the laundry. On a Tuesday, you can go to the spot. On a Wednesday, you could go to First Floor. On a Thursday, you end up at the Evelyn. On a Friday night, then there's all the gigs. Everything is interstate internationals. Everything is all happening, and so it was just like, oh wow, like this is great. And so so just kind of slowly, you know, kind of piecemeal, like, you know, kind of go check this out. But I'm always just rolling by myself. But I feel like I was lucky, and not everyone has the same experience. Like, I guess because people noticed me by myself, they were kind of, and also at the time there was maybe concerns of safety as well, which some people were like, yo, come over here and hang with us because it was way more violent back then. Like, you know, it was kind of like, you here by yourself? Nah, you're rolling with us, because like if any one of these motherfuckers sniffs out that you're dolo, like you might get your head kicked in, like not by any virtue of doing anything wrong. It was just the vibe, and like, you know, it's like alcohol and testosterone equals bloodshed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and it's just the science. Like, it's not even,
it's
you know, it's like
now.
Definitely now there's more, you know, properly curated, you know, like things like, you know, in terms of the way that the gigs are billed, and from the door to the, you know, to the bar staff, like, you know, everyone's involved because they are passionate about it, as opposed to like, you know, certain clubs where they'd be playing hip hop, but it's a money grab, so they don't give a fuck about the culture. Like, they just want drunk people in their room so that they can make some money, and then, you know, then that's where people end up squabbling, because there's not really a curated intention also of like, oh yeah, we're here to hear this shit that we love. It's like, I'm just here to get laid, and if you're talking to the girl that I want to fuck, I'm going to fuck you up. Like, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what it was. Like, yeah, and it's that age demographic, you know, like first time being out drinking and, you know, all that shit. So, yeah, it's I mean, it's fun to look back on, but like, you know, some people don't have
changed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like, you know, for the people who really kind of suffered some shit that like they didn't deserve to because of that attitude that they look at now. Fuck hip hop. Like it's like, yeah, you're valid. You're more than welcome to say that shit based off what, you know, or based on what these clowns who thought that they were representing hip hop ended up kind of getting you involved in. So yeah. Anyway.
So those guys, when you said they said coming over here, who are we talking about? Who's letting you?
Who's letting me in? Oh, far out. There's a lot. There's a lot of people, man. And then also, so I feel like I was like, the more that it's coming back, I'm just like, fuck, I did a lot of shit, like, for like in such a short time span, like before. So it's like, by the time I was here, I kind of, you know, using the internet to my full advantage to, you know, see what's happening where, this, like ozhiphop.com. So it always had where the battles were happening, a lot of the underage battles as well. Like that was stuff that was coming up. So because I was just 17, yes, I wasn't like, I was kind of going to the clubs and they were like, nah, man, you're underage, and which was kind of a bit of also like a culture shock, I guess, because in Namibia it's like it's not really that policed. Like, you know, I mean, we were kids at the club. Like first time I went, so roughly around the time where I'm starting to write rhymes and shit, which is year 2000, 2001. I'm already been at the club, like, you know what the club is like, and, you know, like kind of all of those environments. So coming here and being like, realizing like, oh shit, you guys only get to do it when you're 18, or if you know homie on the door, or you know someone who's involved in this that'll sneak you in through the back, or be like, no, he's cool, he's with me, I won't let him drink, and then find him passed out in the toilet or some shit like you know. Yeah, and so like I was kind of going to the underage battles and stuff like that. And actually, the first person who I really met properly and was like, hey, what's your name? You rap? Cool. There was Fluent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, it was very funny. Like, I think we're the same age. Like, he's kind of maybe a year older than me or a couple months older than me. But it was the only times where there's like actual battles. It's like, you know, in the city at, it's like just one of those gazebos, just like kind of on the,
like a rotunda type.
Yeah, the rotunda that's kind of, you know, where the arts center is like kind of up there.
Near
like,
the skate park.
Near the skate park, yeah, but it wasn't there. Yeah, that wasn't there. Yeah, so like.
It's called something rotunda, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they would have the underage battles because it was like, you know, just a free venue. You know, they just bring a boombox. I think, what was the guy's name? His name was CSL. I haven't seen him since. Like, I saw him in 2005 maybe for the last time, and I haven't seen them since. So he used to run them and, like, you know, like offer prizes and stuff like that. But it's unofficial shit, like, you know, just like entrepreneurial kind of engaging in the culture, trying to facilitate it for people who don't have the options, who can't go to the clubs and they're not old enough to get in. And if it is an underage event, like it's not really rap battles. Maybe if there were battles, it might be a breakdancing one or something like that. Like if there's any of that, but very underground. So I ended up going to those things to meet people. So like Flu was one of the first people I met. And then it was all the battle rappers like Kani, Nicotine. There was a dude, Switchblade, NJ, Pabs. I don't know if you know Pabs. He's been doing stuff with Morns lately. Like, so Morns' last album, I think they recorded that together. So I met Pabs way early, like 2004. Pabs, Illuminate, back then when he was like fucking 13, 14 or whatever, and killing. That guy is like, hands down, like one of the best freestylers I've ever heard in my life. Like in my life. And this is when he was 13, like, you know, it's like
and
when
you're
he was
like 17, you know, 18.
And I'm 17, 18, right? And I'm just like, what the fuck? This kid is incredible. Like, you know. So those were kind of the guys I was kind of seeing, you know, because of going to these underage things. And then when I finally got to go to, or like end up at an overage one, I met Fubex, who is someone I feel like if you can track him down and find him, you should interview that man. Like, cause he was like the almanac of, you know what I mean? Like of Australian rap. Like he was at every gig. It doesn't matter when it was, what day it was, he was there. I was just like,
I saw him 10 years ago or something, but I haven't seen him for a long time.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen him for ages. But yeah, so he was like kind of one of the first people who like kind of similar, just moved dolo. Like, you know, it's like, I guess because of his condition, like, you know, I feel he's autistic, you know. I think people were like, ugh, like, you know, where I was just
but
like,
that
yeah,
helps
man,
him
like
have like that, know where everything's got. Yeah,
that's it, yeah. And so, yeah, and so like kind of hung out with him, and you know, we'd kind of meet up at gigs, like not kind of texting, but I just knew, all right, if I'm going to this show, I know he's going to be there, you know. And so that's someone like, you know, kind of, you know, was kind of hanging around him, and you know, just getting to kick it. And then just slowly, eventually, like, you know, learning different places and how to get there from Maribyrnong. It's like also understanding the geography of the city, because it was like, I don't know where the fuck this
but
place
everything's
is.
connected though.
But it is all connected, which is very lucky. So there's always a train that goes into the city, goes out and comes back in. And, you know, it's like you can, once you navigate that, you're kind of, you know, it's like you can get it. It only takes a couple trips and you're like, oh, okay, I know
don't
where
need
this
your
is.
Melways
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, now the Melways is gone. So, yeah, so kind of just doing that, just kind of doing the solo trips, whatever, and then, you know, different people would see it. It's like, oh, do I recognize you from, were you at the other show? Like,
Are you competing at these unofficial battles, or you're just soaking it
just
in?
watching, yeah, just
Okay.
yeah,
'Cause
just
you just love
watching,
the
just because I
culture.
just love the culture. I just want to
Were you waiting
see
for someone
people
to
who's
say,
like,
man, you know, step up, or?
So sometimes it would happen, like, you know, if it was just like waiting for the tram or something, you know, like kick a, you know, the cipher would, you know, happen. I'd just kick one of the 3 rhymes that I had written at that time, you know, like,
You hadn't
you know,
started, yeah.
but I hadn't really been kind of fully writing. I was writing raps, but they weren't structured. There was just bars and bars and bars and bars and bars. So it's just like you can kind of kick any formation of a 16 out of those couple of couplets, and then also trying to learn how to freestyle in the meantime as well.
Are you
Like,
keeping
and
them up
so
here though, or are they just on paper mostly?
some I can recall, like, you know, but then just recall 4 and then freestyle another 4 and then remember another 4 and kind of
fill the
freestyle, and
gaps.
so, yeah, just filling the gaps, and because it's like that was really out of that whole 8 Mile, like, you know, it's like kind of everyone was very much there was now. It's just like, oh, you freestyling off the top, and that was kind of a point of, you know, like maybe it was like a rite of passage, if you will. Like, you know, it's like every MC at that time was like you had to try and kick total freestyle, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like, oh, rhyme about the page, I'm bringing in the rage, I'm getting on the stage, I elevate the you know, it's like a next one, and, you know, so there was all of that was really which is the building blocks
cool.
of MCing, you know. It's like, you know, you kind of have to know how to do that to really be able to even start the song.
Yeah,
you know, it's like you kind of have to feel some kind of, and a lot of people write like that, like, you know, it's like we'll just like freestyle mumble to the beat just to get like a kind of the flow and whatever, and then like kind of write the words over and, you know, kind of build like that. But anyway, so at these underage battles, then eventually I'm kind of going into and being able to see the gigs and stuff like that. Like, but I remember this one time when it was the what was it? The block party. You remember the obese block parties? Like, they were having, and so this one was at Metro, which was, you know, on Burke Street.
Yeah.
It's like huge, man. Like, it was a massive show. And I remember going there and just kind of being like, all right, I think I have an idea of, you know, it's like I start small. Like, I'm not gonna you know, claim that I'm gonna sell 1 million records or whatever, but I'm like, I'm gonna work towards being a part of this. Like, you know, and like just seeing that, like, I was just like, what? Like, this is, you know, it was like Bliss and SO, and, you know, I think the Hoods ended up playing, but I ended up catching a contact high and greening the fuck out. Like, there was some dudes next to me who were like blowing this crazy weed. Like, you know, it's like, and like just standing next to them, like, and one, like, homie was like blowing smoke in this, and that back then you could smoke inside, so it's just like kind of caught a whiff of that, and then was like smoking, and it just like, I wasn't smoking weed back then, so I just, I was just like, what the fuck is going on? What's happening to me? And then, like, luckily this girl kind of noticed what was happening. She's like, are you all right? And I was like, no. I think I'm dying. Fuck. and then pulled me to the side and like kind of had to like kind of sit up against the wall, like, and just no, I didn't enjoy the rest of the night, but
you saw that at that moment what you wanted to be a part of.
But at that moment, I was just like, that connection. And then even like her, like helping me to the side and kind of, and then other people coming and checking in, like, you all right, man? Like, it was like, and I'm good. And someone bring me water. And like, as soon as I had some water, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Let me get the fuck out of here.
Imagine you had an actual puff on it, man.
I know, right? Like, I would have probably would have just blacked out. But yeah, so a lot of those things, those are like the formative, really, months. Like, so all of this is happening in kind of almost the first 3-4 months of kind of being out, and because it's like
crazy that happened.
And
you bring your brother back home and be like, man, you should.
It's like you wouldn't believe, yo, I saw this rap show and talked to this guy, and like, you know, it's like, and I actually had a copy of the Bias album. I sent him sent him tracks, and he was like, Ladies Man, it's like, that's one of my favorite Bias songs. Like that beat, it's like, dun, 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 dun. Yeah, sick. So I'm like, I met this person at the show. It's like, what, really? Da, da, da. So it's like, it was really cool, like to be, kind of involved as an observer, and being able to see like, oh, okay, cool. And then remembering what Frank said, it was just like, oh, okay, if you want it, it's easy to be a part of this. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's approachable.
It's approachable. You can do it, but you gotta, find your tribe, I guess. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that you're gonna just do that with anyone. It's like, if you're really dedicated to kind of committing to it and making this a lifelong thing, it's like you also then have to find people who you want to be around for the rest of your life. And so, like, just luckily, I guess if you move with the intention of, it's like you receive the results of that. Like, you see, like, you choose a certain group, like you get certain results out of that. And, so if you're just open to being like, I just want to be around people who believe in this as much as I do, and also are realistic about it, and have realistic expectations out of the outcome. It's just like, it's like the outcome is the finished product. So, we keep it there, like, not be like, and we're going to make mad money out of this, and we're going to do this and this. And it's just like, no, that's not how that happens. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to have the right intentions, first of all, like to make a product that, it's like that you believe in. And then you now engage the minds who know how to sell a product that they believe in. Yeah. And then get that to an audience of people who believe in this thing that they've now given up their money for. And then rinse and repeat and develop that. Like, but like, if you're just, and build, yeah. And so, like, as Frank was saying, it's like, like, figure out, okay, I want to do this, and then go and find the people who do that. Yeah. Who are willing to part with the information or have space in their roster of being able to do that for you.
And you're somewhat unproven at this stage because you've only done a few raps here and there, so you haven't shown your value to these people yet.
Exactly. So how am I going to expect them to think that I'm worth anything if I don't have anything worth anything? So it's like, and so it's just like, going and watching the people who are doing it. You know, it's like, and studying and just, I guess I'm already a fan of it. So it's like I know the shorthand. I understand it's like I know whose beat you're rapping over. I know, so it's like, so seeing all of these things and being able to just soak it in, like, and also uninterrupted, like, so a lot of things that we end up like either liking or being around is by the crew that you're around. But like for me, because I'm by myself, so I can go wherever the fuck I want. You know what I mean? Like, I can go and watch a jazz gig. I can go and watch some rock and roll punk thing. I can go and watch you because no one's like, nah, man, why you want to go there for? It's like, because I want to go, motherfucker. Yeah. And so I get to do all of that uninterrupted. And
so then on the timeline, say it's like 2005-ish now.
No, it's still 2004.
2004. So you figured out what you want to do. Have you got your hands on an MPC or a way to make beats or anything like that?
Nah.
So you're just writing raps?
Just purely writing. And that was kind of in my mind. I was like, okay, focus on one thing. Like, it's like start somewhere and then try and map your way around. So it was like the writing was the easiest. Like, all I need is a pen and a pad. That's it. Yep. I don't even need the instrumentals or beats or whatever, like, because that's not, doesn't matter. As long as I've got the rhymes, I can rap that over any beat, you know? So
it's the most approachable way to do
yeah,
it.
it's the easiest way to do it. And then also because of my previous years of, you know, like working in art and like kind of doing creative writing and then also working on interpretive drawing. So it's like I'm already in the mindset of I know how to kind of I know how to extract the words in the writing towards a concept. So it's just now about like what's the concept? Like what else am I, you know, kind of what am I, you know, in the lab, like, oh, I'll take a bit of red and then I'll take a little bit of this green and then maybe I'll just pour this on it and see what happens and be like, oh yeah, cool. It's a great mess.
So you start to figure out, I need the concept, I've got the lyrics, I've got the that side of it, but then you got to find some original beats as well.
Yeah, and so in that, like then from being in like around the ciphers and things like that, and then eventually kind of going to more of the open mic kind of nights where so it's like, you know, different groups get up and they are showcasing their stuff.
Yeah.
And so then in that's when I started paying attention to like, okay, cool. Who are the guys who are not rapping over jack beats? I'm going to try and, you know, it's like at least, you know, develop a rapport just for me to be able to ask like what are you using to make those beats? Like I'm sort of across Fruity Loops and stuff like that. I get that because of the computer thing.
And that's all digital.
And it's all digital, so I'm kind of getting that, but it's like I'm not really proficient at it. And it's like, yeah, all right, stick to the writing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So then this is now, yeah, so 2004. And like I'm, you know, kind of getting around and starting to figure out, oh, okay, yeah, cool. This venue does this venue has this is where the open mic is at. This is, you know, where this is happening. And so yeah, so just like kind of the early years was just rocking up to the shows and just being like, okay, that person's rapping over this, that person's rapping over this, that person, these guys, every time they come up, like it's always different beats. It's like, who are these guys? And then it's like then kind of being like, oh, hang on, that's Pabs that I met at the underage shows and stuff like that. Oh, okay. Oh, word. It's like, oh, that's why you weren't rapping, because you don't rap, you make beats. Oh, okay, cool.
Putting the pieces together.
Yeah, and then now we're building the rapport. It's like we know each other, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Like, do you mind if I come around and just watch you do that shit? Like, you know, it's like, and then it's just sitting and watching this person making a beat and be like, oh, okay, cool. That's how it works. And sampling. Oh, where you take these little bits and say, oh, I always wondered how
these
this
records
works.
that you're probably listening to
That's
15 years ago.
That's right. And I'm like, oh wow, like I didn't realize that's how you get the music into the computer. So you have to record it through this, and you know, then piecing all of that together. You know, it's like and then that switches that part in my brain where it's just like, the manual. You know, how do you unpack and then kind of being like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, like let me try and at least be around people who kind of know about that shit and then try and figure it out from there. So then that was 2004. But then in the midst of all of this, like, you know, homesickness is kicking in. You know, I'm by myself. It's like, you know, just
You're
really
making
like,
friends,
you know,
but not really
making
close.
friends, but not really any close. You know, I'm still speaking to people back home and being like, yo, man, like, you know, and it's culturally, it's very different. Like, you know, it's just like, and I'm still not really used to it, like, you know, so it was hard, like, you know, so then and then it was like
that,
man, like just like super alone, like, and so then I decided to go back. So basically, like, you know, I was studying and like, but I was doing TAFE, like, so because I was still too young to get, or I wasn't 18 in 2004 at the beginning of the year, so I couldn't enroll for uni yet. So I was still like kind of technically underage, so I had to do some TAFE courses beforehand before I could then enroll for the computer science degree that I wanted to do. And then so studying, you know, I'm like kind of passing and, you know, just getting all that shit out of the way. But then again, like, so now there's the extra kind of, I'm trying to study computer science, but I don't have a computer.
Right? You didn't have a computer?
No, like, and because like I'm kind of, just
Spend all your computer money
spending
on
all my
CDs.
computer money. No, like, I mean, okay, so I should rephrase. I did have a computer, but it wasn't like in terms of what I wanted to study. I'm realizing like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to buy hard drives. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to buy, it's like and then as the computer, like I have to, upgrade and be able to be at standard, at industry standard, like, you know what I mean? Like to be able to understand, and this shit is, back then it was fucking expensive. Now you can buy a computer that will do all sorts of shit for like $500, like terabyte hard drive and whatever. And it's like, this is back when, like literally when I was studying, like it's like fucking floppy disk. You know what I mean? Like, if you're writing or coding a website and you have to fit all of that into a floppy disk or whatever. And it's just like, kind of like, oh no, if I'm going to build a website, I need like storage. I need this. I need internet access. I need, that's electricity running through the motherfucking roof. Like you got a computer on all day. Like, yeah, especially the way they were crunching back then. Like, it's like, takes you 2 minutes to download a fucking HTML page. That's power, So all of these things. And then, so it's like, kind of coming into this realization of like, oh, okay, like, there's, in terms of the, weighing up the cost efficiency of which career would I like to push towards. So is it like, okay, I can see that this art thing there's an industry here. There's like, it's a kind of a realistic, like if I lean towards it, like I could probably do something here. And like, and then
there's a path with lots of different,
That's right. And so as like that's happening and I'm like, all right, cool. In my mind, like that's when I come back, that's where I'm going to, like, I'm definitely going towards this path. Like, sorry, I'm speaking out of the microphone.
No,
like,
okay. But you decided you were going to go home for a while.
But I had to go home for a while. Like, I was just kind of like, I've got to, you know what I mean? I got to tap back in.
You know what you're in
like,
for when you come back here.
Yeah.
You're like, I understand that I've got some connections and know where I'm going. I get how it works.
Yeah.
The first time you're coming in pretty blind.
Yeah, like it was like just getting the fucking head, like the balaclava off my face, like towards the end of the year. Just like, oh, okay. And then like kind of had to skip back, which was good. Then it like, kind of gave me to, like kind of perspective and time to really think about like, okay, what is it that I actually want to do? And then, so essentially, like, even though I'm writing and I'm doing all of that, like, in terms of a career path, I was like, okay, cool. If I can somehow get into a label's door and just be like, look, I've got really good, like, rapport of music, of, like, like, kind of, I understand it really well. Like, I know, like, who distributed this, what year did it come out, all of these kind of inside details that, require knowledge to understand even how to market something. How do you tell people about a rap show if you don't, just all these other things. And so in my mind, I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'm going to try and do artist and repertoire. Mm-hmm. Anyone who lets me in the door, like, that's out. Like, it's like, we'll do that. And then afterwards realizing like, oh yeah, nah, it's not, you don't just walk in the door and get that job. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you've got the right idea.
But I had that as the idea, right? And so that was like kind of the focus. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, let me then start. Then that was kind of shaping the lens of my approach to the computer thing. Like, so it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what's, it's like understanding websites and this, and, it's like really developing a knowledge of how to use really the internet, and as a access point of all this knowledge, and, really kind of trying to dial into that and kind of being like, all right, as long as I stay understanding this and how it works, it's like, I'll be good, like, and then, so this is now really the advent of, where it's like, it's going from MSN, but now it's like, there's online forums and chat groups and stuff like that. Yeah. And then all of this is kind of splintering off, and then people are kind of forming crews and meeting up outside and, doing recording, and, all of these things are kind of happening. And it's the beginnings of it, like, so now everyone has...
Kind of 1.22, sort of,
that's it, yeah. And so, like, just with that focus, just knowing, like, okay, cool, like, this is really this is where eventually, I mean, now it's like you can't even think of not using a computer or your phone for anything, whereas back then it's like it's the last thing you're thinking about doing, you know. But I knew that that was kind of where it was heading because I'm studying it, and you're seeing, you know, like the proliferation of
It's changing in real time.
It's changing in real time. Like, yeah, it's like, you know, the advent of online banking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No one
Like,
was
it's
trusting
like
their
no
shit.
one was really trusting because they didn't really know how to do it or whatever. And it's just like, oh, okay, like I'm pretty proficient with that. I get it. Like, and so, oh, okay, I can see that, how that can then apply to, you know, and then you see the beginnings of MySpace and things like that, where it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Like, you know, you can actually
Interact with
the internet and interact with people. And then where, like, the first thing where it was just kind of like, oh shit, like you can put music up on MySpace, but then people were putting just songs that they liked. And then the smart people were like, actually, I'm going to put my song on there.
And then other people can
And
use
then
that
other
song.
people can use that song. And then that just kind of went, and it was like, oh, okay, cool.
So you were thinking about this when you went back home?
Yeah.
How long did you leave for?
So I left in November, and then I came back in February. So it's like kind of 3 months.
But then you come back here with a plan, understanding Melbourne, knowing how.
Yeah, knowing Melbourne a bit more, like kind of having a bit more of like, oh, okay, I know where to go to be able to either find this knowledge or, you know, meet the person who can do this thing and all of that. And so so came February, and then I was here for like maybe a week or something like that, and ended up going to a party with someone who I'd met at the student village. Then eventually, like, they moved out and they had their own spot, and then they had a housewarming party or whatever, and ended up going to that, getting pretty drunk, and then ended up getting into a fight, like, and so got jumped, and then kind of woke up in hospital the next morning.
When you just first come back.
Just come back, and it's like, and I kind of understand how I got in that situation, like, you know, especially coming from back home, and it was like, that's what, like, it's like that back in the, you know, it's like,
You could have handled it
it's like,
differently?
yeah, I could have handled it, but it's just because I was just so drunk, like, you know, it's like, and this was now again, like the iterations of like kind of where it's like, you know, just getting too faded and in spaces, and it's just like, fuck, I shouldn't have done, like, you know, it's like, but then the thing in my brain that, like, I'm just like so grateful for is this, like, I'm so glad that I was that drunk, because if I was sober, like, it would be a very different story. Like, I'd be speaking from a different perspective of, I may have killed someone that night, like, you know. So it's like, so yeah, so like kind of almost this gratitude for the stuff, like that was the worst thing that could have happened.
But
to
maybe
me.
that kind of was a good reality check to be like, okay, I need to not handle that, or this needs to,
yeah, or like, and it was just like very clear in my mind. If homie's on that energy, I'm not there. We can be friends and whatever, like, you know, if you even just like kind of whispers of, man, you know, I don't like da-da-da-da-da, and that's someone I know, I'm out.
Get out of the way.
I'm out. And even people who then come to, I know you guys are beefing, I'm putting you together, I'm like, listen, I'm not here to tell you what to do with your lives, but if you guys continue to have problems with each other, I'm not rocking with you.
And that's
It's
cool,
like,
man.
oh, and sometimes it freaks people out. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, and it's like, but it's just like, no, it's unnecessary. And I feel like the three of us in like moving towards a common goal and doing like, you know, in uplifting each other is way better than you guys fucking beefing, and like, and I'm just not here to support that, you know, so.
And that's good that you had that reality check in.
Yeah, and it
early
was just
times.
like very early, and it was like, bam, okay, cool. All right, so then it's like kind of the shaping of all these things. It's like, all right, what do I want to do? Okay, I want to work towards that. Okay, what type of attitude do you have to have? All right, I'm not dealing with any beef talk. I'm not supporting any. That's why you've never heard a diss track from me, ever. Never will.
It's just
never.
negativity,
Like,
man.
yeah, it's negative, and it's just like, it's just dumb shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, so like that. And so like all of this shit is really compacted in like a lot of short time. So then that week, the morning I wake up in the hospital, like there was a battle that day.
How fucked up are you though?
And so it's like, again, like, so these guys are lucky it's as drunk as I was, because it's like if I was more so, I would have been way more we would have been fighting. These guys just jumped me and like just because I was just like couldn't move, and then like knocked me out by kicking me in the head, like while I was on the ground. But like there
no
wasn't
ongoing injuries or anything.
no really like so like my jaw, like where I got kicked, and then like when I hit my head on the pavement and like kind of split my head at the back. But then that was it. Like I woke up and I was just like, fuck, those guys were going to town on me. But like anyway, luckily I guess because I was just drunk as well and just limber. Whereas if I was even just like one drink less, like, and I would have been, and probably, just big trouble. Anyway, wake up, checking myself. I'm like, good. Like, look, there's a bit of blood on the pillow, but it's not bad. Like, look at myself in the mirror. It's like, oh no, I'm all right. And I rock up to this battle, like, and everyone's looking at me like, what the fuck happened to you?
The black
Like, I was just like, yeah, I just had a little squabble. Like, it's all good. It's nothing major. Like, they're just like, yo, you should probably go home, bro. Like,
but it showed your commitment.
But and it was in my mind, and like, yeah, it was just like, this is what I'm aiming to be a part of. Like, you know what I mean? Like, keep the bullshit out of it, but this. And then that has just been kind of my blind focus for the past, 19 years now.
Yeah.
So
after you prove your commitment like that, people start to take you seriously, your rapping picks up, things start to move quickly, I'm guessing.
fairly quickly, yeah. So it was like, I was just, and I'm not alone in it. Like, like at that time, it was just the synergy of it was just really, like kind of on the, it's like it was really the time of, Hilltop Hoods are really starting to like fucking pick up, or like Obese as a roster, really. So it was like, you've got Hilltop, Bliss and Esso, Bias,
Muffin
Plutonics, just starting. Well, Muffin was definitely like, he had his solo releases, like the More Than Music and what was the other one? I forget. Reason. Pegs is also like, Pegs is dropping his shit as well, like on that Capricorn Cat album. So there's that, and then there's really the like, or at least what I was starting to notice as well was like there was the kind of the real, like the UK hip hop really started to kind of was like bang, like, like on all levels, like, the commercial.
Simmering, but
now it was like boom, like after the Dizzy Rascal, So Solid Crew, Miss Dynamite, Jest, Rodney P, and Skits, Maestro, all of that, like, it's like all Task Force, all of these things are kind of happening, and those guys are now also coming here, and so it's like the groundswell of, seeing international artists who are kind of, rocking in a similar kind of similar aesthetic, that underground aesthetic, really bar heavy, but coming to the surface. But then also at the same time, there was a lot of, because we're seeing each other doing the same thing, so there was a lot more. It was a lot more supportive. There wasn't really the competition. I mean, there's rumblings of shit, but that was often, as I got more involved with the scene, you'd notice, those are people who are on the outside of this who are making those grumbles. Because these guys who you're calling rivals and shit, like they were at the barbecue yesterday. You know what I mean?
But
like,
that's
so it's
people
like
on the forums talking shit.
That's it, and so then being able to kind of see or be on either opposing sides of fences, or you can kind of move between, and like, and so. And I think also then because of my aesthetic of, like I'm not gossiping about people. We don't talk shit. That's not me.
Yep.
So eventually that kind of becomes, you get known for shit that. It's like, no, he's really cool, man. Like he's, like solid, like, and so that kind of gets me into these other spaces and keeps me around people because they're, it's like, I'm not here to bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've just got a mindset of like, I'm 100% a fan first.
Then you go from being the fan into, you've infiltrated that scene, you're in there.
Yeah, so now I'm in there, but still with the fan mindset. And I think I've never broken that, because then I'm losing the essence of what it is that I'm trying to do.
Okay.
If I can never stand back from everything that I've done and be like, I did that with the with everyone in mind, not like I'm the guy.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so it's like that's what I've always, you know, like I've been able to constantly kind of step back
With
and
the
be
tribe
like,
mentality,
everyone, like whoever's kind of slip, or what's up, or you don't want to be, okay, cool. Then that's why, not because something I've done forced you out, or something people who I'm with and whatever we're doing is pushing you out. It's like, nah, that's not it's always each one teach one, involve like no children left behind, and that's what it's
supposed to be.
That's what
got lost for a while,
for sure. But that's because that's the industry mentality. Yeah. So just because now this culture is getting swallowed into capitalist industry, of course that's the business model. You know what I mean? Like so, But in terms of there's no business model with this. This is like the culture model. This is like how do you it's like how we grow together, and
so then you start to record raps now and you're getting out of that stage like doing the freestyle stuff.
Yes, so I'm now slowly starting to make connections with people who have their own little setups at home and stuff like that. So and then at this time, this is also when there was an open mic night at, I don't know if you ever went to the Bunker Bar.
Yeah.
Like downstairs across the road from the RMIT. So then that was when I was like really kind of like, all right, gonna try and really get in and sharpen the sword on this, like every open mic or whatever, anything that said like, oh yeah, you can come up, you can I'm there, So this is now 2005, and so this is now when this is just the times of like the revolver battles. What was the other one? The Battle for Supremacy. Yeah, there was that one. That was like But then what? What was it? Anyway, so open mics. This is like a lot of that stuff is happening, and then I met. So it was like around the time where it's like I met far out. Why am I? It's like because there's a lot of people, but like I'm trying to figure like, okay, who was the first ones? Okay, so it was like I met I don't know if you remember DJ Plasma.
No.
Plasma is like a writer as well.
I remember Plasma.
If you ever seen that, like he was DJ as well. I don't think he wrote Plasma though. He wrote something else. But Plasma, and then Yaps was hosting it was like an open mic thing that they were doing, and then Matta and Must were also involved with that, and so that was around the time I'd first met those guys, and then then I also met Reese and rest in peace to my guy Natso Murky Depth. So then I think they only also just recently moved down from Canberra. They were like kind of new to Melbourne or just starting to be around here, and like the whole BTE clip. Yeah, they were like kind of slowly trickling down, like coming into Melbourne and stuff. And so like those guys were like kind of again, like just, yo, you here by yourself? Cupcake, get over here, man. Like, it's like, what's happening? Where you from? What? Like, and we're just kind of talking. And then from there, like, I mean, like, yeah, me and Nat were like very close, like until he passed away. Like, was very fervent support on my shit. Like, I'd always get a message from him. It's just like, bro, I'm killing it, bro. It's like really like kind of like, wow. Like, it's like, this guy's, really positive. Yeah, like, and, someone who people were like essentially afraid of. Like, there were people like, yo, like, isn't he crazy or something like that? And it's like, I don't see that. Like, but then it's also because that's my template. I'm like, no bullshit. I'm not gonna. Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna bring it. Like, and if I do, like, I should get checked on it. And just like it's like I will check, or someone will check you on that, and it's like either we don't do it, or it's like go do it over there. But yeah, every time, mad positive, just so encouraging. Like always, like anything that I was doing, like he was really, really, really supportive, and yeah, and so it made it easy to kind of keep that attitude because it's like someone who you kind of expect, like, oh shit, like these guys are thugs, you know. And it's like I don't know, like that guy is, you know, supports me to, you know, stay positive and keep a really positive mindset on approaching the music. So I don't know. I was like, what conversations are you having with him? Like, but yeah. So that's the time when I'm meeting all these people. Like, actually, there's one thing I left out, kind of. At the time, you remember the Out for Fame magazines that you know, like you're pretty much free. Like, you know, they were kind of out. So Out for Fame did a thing with Dexter.
Yep.
That was, I don't know if you went to it. Like, it was the basketball thing in the Metro.
I didn't, but yeah, I do know what you
Yeah,
mean.
it's like it was like a street ball
Yeah.
competition where they open up the floor and put a court on it, and you know. So I ended up actually playing in that. I forget this, like, because I was like, what was the?
Dex is a good basketballer too, man.
He's a great player. That motherfucker can ball. Like, he deserves to be like in the NBL. Like, fucking, he's strong as a motherfucker. Like, that dude is like he's super strong. Like, bend metal strong. Like, motherfucker. Like, straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he organized that, and so that was, I guess, when I said, like, I kind of conflated the stories of, like, so there was the first time I went to the Metro, greened out, and then the second time I went, like, I was like, kind of, it was pretty much backstage as an art, even though I was just playing basketball.
Yeah.
But, you know, kind of got the backstage area, this, and seeing all of
Sick
that.
backstage
and,
there
you
as
know,
well.
yeah, it was so dope. And so, like, kind of that was also then, like, kind of, you know, where I said, oh, this is what I want to be a part of. Like, I want to be involved. It's like, you know, those two experiences of being at the Metro, like, kind of seeing it and being like, yo, I want to be involved in this. And then also then being in it and realizing, like, oh, okay, what? That the plan hasn't changed or the feeling hasn't changed. Like, so keep doing that. So through that show, that's where I ended up actually meeting, like, I met Daniel Merriweather, Llama Rock, you know, Llama, B-Boy Llama. Someone else you should also come and get on the show, like, have a chat with him. Llama Rock, and Demi, you know, big old Demi, and her brother, I forget his name. I think it might be Carlos or something. I'm not sure. And Jace actually was also there. Like, Jace was doing something, like playing at the DJ set or something like that. So it's like, again, like, you know, these kind of experiences of seeing these people close up and being like, oh, wow, like, yo, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm here, you know, and then really kind of, you know, going to the open mic nights and then seeing them there and being like, oh, okay, like, you know, it's like, this is the thing to do. Like, you know, this is where it's at. Like, this is like the dojo, you know what I mean? Like, you come and you know, you train over here and then you go and do the show afterwards. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Like, again, that pointing the dots is like, oh, okay, you practice your raps at the open mic. And then when you have the show, then you got them down. You already have the stage presence. You know what it's going to sound like, you know, out loud.
Cutting your teeth.
Yeah, you know, it's like kind of doing all of that, like, yeah, just every week. And it was just, yeah, just like bam, bam, bam. And then, so like I fast forward a little bit and then meeting up with Musty and them and then actually going to the studio one time and like kind of been like seeing, it's just like, oh, this Pang functions as a label. Like, it's like, and then like, ding, first label that I get into where I see that thing, I'm going to pitch and be like, yo, let me work on artist and repertoire. Mm-hmm. Bam, there's the label. So it's like, okay, cool. But the plan of, yo, first label or like my first working job in, like, you know, it's like to do A&R for a label. But it's like, bang, there it is, Pang Productions, cool. This is the label I'm going to try and, you know, build, you know, it's like build rapport with other artists and be like, yeah, come record at Musty's place. Or here's Musty's beats. Or here's, like, you know what I mean? Or here, Dill Thomas beats. Like, you know, like that was like, I was like, it was what I wanted to do. I thought it would be at, like, you know, like Warner or, you know, it was like Def Jam or some shit like that. You know, that was the aspirations. But then it's just like, start realistic. Just be where, you know, where you have been welcomed in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they invited me in and it was just like, all right, cool. Like, I have a plan. Like, it's some really cool shit I have in my mind. But then now, like, this, okay, cool. Here's the home of, building that dream up. Here are the people who are, like, still, to this day, like, we just released another album on Pang, like, it's like the Skeleton Coast with me and Discourse and stuff like that. So it's like, this is like a 19-year, kind of mission of being like, like we're going to do this. That's it.
And but was it always, did you want to be an artist first and then the A&R second?
No, so I just wanted to be the A&R, but then realizing now it's just like, oh, fuck. I don't have any projects that I can bring to the table and say like, oh, okay, yeah, you see, this is pairing these guys with this person. You see how that works and da-da-da. So it's like I kind of literally had to do it. And build all these, build these contacts, have these songs with these different people, being able to have these relationships, understanding this and do, so it's like, it was kind of like, oh, fuck, I've got to do it, and then so that eventually was kind of like, all right, well, I can rap. I know how to do that. Now let me start actually, building building something, it's like in terms of,
because you've been working at it for a while.
Yeah, so it's like, I've been building, I have the connects, I've got the, it's like all the contacts and all the, like, if you will, like requisite perspectives and, the observations of what really makes it work or what's actually just, the dream. It's just like, yeah, man, I'm gonna be driving a Bentley, and it's like, no, no.
But you had the right idea.
Yeah, and it's like, to build something that means something, like it's like that's always been the objective, and so it was like if it's gonna mean something, then that's what I just have to do.
And those guys just needed to harness your energy and figure out, and then let you,
yeah, and then we can, it's like we're really building as we're going along, like, so it's like, and it was already something that they were doing really well. Like, their first two albums, the first one was the Vic Spitters compilation, and there was a Matter Must album, but then the second one was the Studio Therapy album, which I ended up being on. And just seeing how these guys were really galvanizing all these different personalities and different people and different, like different graph crews and, things like that. But really in this place where it's like all the bullshit is out the window in here. In here, with like the focus is purely on making dope shit. And just that's it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and just being able to be around that, it just like, I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like this is, I can cherry pick the best options of that and go and apply it anywhere else and, really, learn and kind of build my aesthetic of kind of like, oh, what is, it's like, how do you develop an artist? If I'm not to kind of say, oh, okay, cool, like, let me take this person under my wing and show them like, okay, cool, what's your relationship with this like? Oh, okay, cool, like you can add that to your artistic aesthetic or you can really remove that and then start looking at, it's like what you've got, like, and then really kind of drawing out, okay, what type of music do you like? Okay, cool. Like, these are the foundations of that. Go and watch, learn, and learn and see the people doing it, how they're doing it. Okay, cool. Now come back. How does that fit with what you got? Does it work? Does it not? Okay, cool. Well, then maybe you can remove that element and have like a whole another thing again. Like, and just being able to do that for and understanding how different people work or respond to that kind of criticism or, it's like
every artist is different.
But then if you know how to really build rapport and just be looking at like, it's like it's purely about achieving your most honest expression. And then carving and polishing and chopping and changing after that. Then you don't have to be upset with what comes out because it's just a
authentic.
Yeah, it's authentic and it's just like, it's just like a how would I say? It's like it's just a chapter in the book, right? Chapter can be it's like you intended for it to be 40 pages because there's this story that you really wanted to harness, or you eventually like kind of edited and really like crystallized to the main point that you actually wanted to say, and that chapter's only 2 pages long. and explains everything about the rest of the book. You know what I mean? Like, it only takes time where you have to kind of compile and edit and build and remove and this and burn it again, start again. And, it's like you've got to be able to do that. And so I felt like, to be able to explain that to an artist for if I'm not, wishing to kind of step up and be like, hey, let me represent you or let me help you with a project. If I don't have consideration or awareness of any of those things, how the fuck am I going to help you?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so, like, Pang, that was the home I was able to do that with people who are also doing the same thing. Like, I feel like Dill Thomas is, like, criminally underrated as as a producer, rapper, artist, just him as a human being. Like, he's just, like, one of the fucking best people I know, right? And the only way that I would be able to get people to know his beats was then eventually me rapping on them.
Yeah.
And then after I put the album, I was, oh man, like, yo, this guy's beats are dope. And it's just like, motherfucker, I was telling you this shit.
Sleeping.
Yeah, I told you this in 2005. You know what I mean? Like now 2016, where it's like, it's like really expanded and, it's like getting out there and people are like, yo, this is dope. It's like, told you, man.
It must have been cool to go from the guy who was buying all these records at JB to then going into JB and then seeing the
And
record
seeing
that
the
you're
record,
on.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that must have been a moment.
Oh,
where you're
yeah,
like,
for
"Fuck,
sure.
man,
Yeah.
I'm actually in this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was quite the. It was like, oh shit, the dream is, like the dream is happening.
It is
and and it was just always like, kind of, and that moment as well, like was where it's just like, okay, this is, I was saying, staying in the fan moment, like, you know what I mean, like it's being able to do that and being like, oh shit.
Staying true to
it's like, staying true to what I got, like why I got into it will get me in there, like, and then just kind of being like, just stay there, not necessarily like not want to grow or expand in things, but like still, keeping that like, mentally, yeah, like, detach and observe and appreciate. Because then when I come back in, it's like, I know how far I've come. I know who else is fallen on the wayside, like, if I go back there. And so it's like, again, that all in, no child left behind. So whether they're actively making music anymore or whether they, it's like, don't really listen to, it's like this, those people are still in the collective and part of the energy that keeps it going and the synergy. So, yeah, it's just kind of, you always being mindful of shit like that. Because I've lost a lot of friends, man. Like, like even Methods, who I was talking about, he passed away a couple years ago. My homie, Chap One, who, did you know Sam? Like, so he passed away. Another friend of mine, Sly, like these amazing producers who, it's just kind of just life, just, kind of lifed, and they don't have a life anymore. So being able to kind of being like, it's like, this song reminds me of when we were hanging out, and like, and kind of put that energy in the forward things, like, it's like it's a way of paying tribute and, like kind of holding space for people, like not just them, but then also anyone else who passed away out of similar circumstances, it's like kind of.
You've got to do it for them now,
yeah,
essentially.
Exactly, because they can't. And so if in the opportunity of me being able to do, I will do. With those people in mind, and even if it's just a little bar or the way I rap a line that's like, they like that, like, yeah, I'll do that, and it's, keeps them alive, so.
For sure, music,
through music and art.
I
don't know how we got there, but
it's cool. We might have a quick mic now. We've been talking for 2 hours.
Oh snap! Okay, yeah.
So,